Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andy. Right, so a few questions really just to understand the thought process by some of the government's decisions on this. One of the suggestions made actually in the previous Bill Committee, which we were both part of, I think, was made by one of the Labour backbenchers, was of a nicotine-free generation. We've heard today, particularly from the CMO, was about the way the industry flexes to maintain its pool of addicted people, and we've heard before how young people are particularly vulnerable to the addiction, starting the addiction. So you've also talked today about the simplicity and the importance of making it easy for retailers to be able to do these age checks. So why, when you're raising the age of sale for tobacco products, did you make the choice not to raise the sale for other nicotine products at the same time and have one simple process?
So firstly, thank you, Caroline, for that question. I wasn't actually on the Bill Committee when the previous iteration of this went through Parliament, because I was the Shadow Social Care Minister, had been bumped away from Public Health only to return to it in government. But I think the starting point is, firstly, a recognition that the previous government did bring forward the Tobacco and Vapes Bill. That was incredibly foresighted of them. I thank those, including yourself, that supported that legislation. I think what we've got to be mindful of here is that what we are firstly seeking to do is to make the United Kingdom smoke-free, and smoke-free as soon as possible. As we heard from the chief medical officers from the various nations that make up the United Kingdom, tobacco is a killer. And so our first target has to be driving down the instances of smoking, driving down, as a consequence, the instances of tobacco-related death, tobacco-related illness, and the harms caused by second-hand smoking. And that's why the measures, insofar as tobacco is concerned, are far more weighty than the measures in respect of vaping. I think the other thing that I would like to say in answer to your question, because it is an important point, we are concerned about nicotine addiction, is that we get this balance right. We recognise that vaping is an important smoking cessation tool. As the CMO said, not all countries share that point of view, but in the United Kingdom we see it as an important package to help people to quit smoking. And there has been a very successful scheme in this country, the Swap to Stop initiative, and that is an important part of this. But we are really concerned about the scourge of child and youth vaping, and that is why we think that the measures in this bill are proportionate, in that we are tackling a specific issue in trying to stop children from taking up vaping, and indeed to try and dissuade adults who have never smoked to take up vaping. As the CMOs have said, vaping is better than smoking, but not vaping and not smoking is the best option of all. So this is a proportionate measure. As you know, we are seeking quite far-ranging powers, and that is indeed to ensure that across the four nations we can react as industry reacts to these changes, so that this bill will future-proof in a way that if we were overly prescriptive, we would then have to come back to Parliament with further primary legislation. So whilst we're not seeking nicotine-free at this moment in time, there will be powers in the bill that at some stage in the future the governments that make up the United Kingdom may seek to consult to go further. But where we are now, it's to stop smoking, to get to our smoke-free targets, and to really drive down and crack down on the instances of childhood vaping.
Thank you. I'm not sure I completely understand your argument because, of course, the rise in age of being able to smoke will also inevitably raise the age of people who are wishing to quit. And, of course, if a government wants to do it later, you can end up in a very tricky situation where you're asking people to enforce an age of sale of 18 for alcohol, an age of sale of, 1st of January 2009 for tobacco, and another is yet to be determined debate for vaping, which could actually make things a lot more complicated still. So I'm not sure about that, but thank you for your answer. My other question is about advertising. You'll be aware that I put forward an amendment to the Conservative bill to try and restrict advertising, because I think it is important to try and restrict advertising to children. But how will health professionals who are promoting vaping as an alternative to smoking, specifically in a medical context, not necessarily on the side of a tube or a bus, but in a medical setting, how will they be protected from being criminalised?
So I think this is an area where this bill really does build on the previous government's iteration of tobacco vapes. And, again, take the politics out of it. I want to thank members like yourself that really pushed this last time round. We are able to do this because it was a manifesto commitment of the Labour Party in the 2024 manifesto that we would ban the advertising of vapes and the promotion of vapes in sponsorship, and indeed there is a 75% support for an advertising ban of vapes. In terms of the consequences for vapes as a quit aid and being able to promote vapes as a quit aid, of course you will have read in part 6 of the bill that it is only an offence if advertising is done in the course of business. So that excludes the promotion of vapes for a quit aid, and I think that is something that hopefully you will welcome.
Okay, great, thank you. What was your thought process about shisha and bongs and other sort of paraphernalia that people have raised not being... some people feel that those are not adequately covered by the bill?
Oh, you're going to get me on my hobby horse having mentioned bongs. Well, look, firstly, all tobacco products will be covered by the measures in this bill. So shisha is covered. Shisha is a harmful product, as is other tobacco products, and all tobacco products will be covered by the measures in this bill. In respect of paraphernalia, I have raised with officials and indeed with colleagues in the Home Office what I see as being a potential issue, in that were this bill to become law, as I hope it will, and there is then further consultation on the packaging and display of vapes, we could end up with a situation whereby vapes as cigarettes and other tobacco products are hidden behind cabinets in plain packages, but those same newsagents have bongs in the window. Now, I am assured by my officials that bongs and grinders can also be used for the consumption of tobacco, and therefore will fall within the scope of the measures in this bill, in that they will not be able to be displayed.
Okay, thank you. And then my final question is about the awareness of public spaces legislation. So you're taking the powers to restrict people's ability to smoke and vape outside in places that you've chosen reasonably sensibly, but you could extend those. If you do extend them, how will you ensure that people know about them so that they're not inadvertently criminalised because they just didn't know that you have... If the Secretary of State has can in the morning wake up and decide that he or she, depending on what it is at the time, wants to change this public spaces legislation, that they can very easily do so. how will we make sure people know that it's been done?
Well, we can't easily do so. The powers in the bill mean that we have a statutory duty to consult. As we've already heard, Wales already covers the areas that we wish to consult in respect of England. Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales will have their own consultations, but as far as England is concerned, the government has been very clear that should this bill pass, we will consult on implementing smoke-free outdoors around children's playgrounds, around schools and outside hospitals. I think given the media interest and speculation that there was over the summer as to outdoor areas that the government might extend the outdoor restrictions to, including hospitality, I don't think it would be the possibility of any government to just wake up one day and decide we're going to extend these measures to X, Y and Z and nobody notice. I think it would be on the front cover of every newspaper. It would be all over X and Facebook and Blue Sky and other social media. People would be very aware of a government's intentions to extend outdoor smoking, and we would be under a statutory duty to consult and to pursue secondary legislation, which of course is ultimately subject to a vote of the House.
The Welsh government are apparently struggling with compliance in hospital areas. What have you learnt from your Welsh counterparts on how you can ensure that it's better enforced and better complied with in England?
So I think that's a really important question, and it's why at every opportunity today I've been asking those with an interest in public health in Wales what lessons we can learn. Look, we want to get this right, and the reality is that as well as the package of enforcement that we will be bringing forwards, as well as the registration, the licensing scheme, the fixed penalty notices, we have to approach this with a degree of proportionality, and particularly to ensure that there is as good a compliance with the regulations as possible. Look, most people are law-abiding citizens, and what we saw from the smoking ban indoors that was introduced in 2006-07 was that most people complied from day one, and I really expect that in respect of children's playgrounds, schools and outside hospitals, most people will comply, and I would hope that the enforcement agencies use a degree of discretion and proportionality in the outset to ensure that those that aren't complying understand that they are potentially breaking the law and should stop doing what they're doing.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Okay, we've about 15 minutes left, and with 5 members who wish to ask questions, so if we could do it briefly and obviously briefer answers as well. Liz Jarvis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. Lord Bishard mentioned the issue of border force, and I wondered if that is going to be a consideration in ensuring that border force has got enough resources to make sure this bill is implemented successfully. And also, Matthew Shanks mentioned in response to my question about a public health campaign, are there any plans to have a public health campaign to back the bill?
The short answer to both of those is yes. Look, we have committed to an investment across HMRC, trading standards and border force of £100 billion over the course of the next 5 years to enforce these measures. We are very keen that as far as public health campaigns are concerned, and it's £100 million. Sorry, the Treasurer will be having a fit with me, getting my billions and millions wrong. I wish it was £100 million. And in the case of the public health campaigns, look, we have committed already just this week to the £70 million for smoking cessation. I have signed off for this new year a very concerted public health campaign on social media and broadcast media for smoking cessation. And as this bill progresses and becomes law, there will be a huge public health publicity campaign so that everybody is aware of our smoke-free 2030 target ambitions.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, just a couple of points, if I may. First is to do with poverty and how this bill affects those that are disproportionately impacted by not only smoking but by second-hand smoke. We heard from our CMOs and from Professor Bald the impact that smoking-related diseases has, particularly in those populations. It's not often in our lives that we get an opportunity to use an instrument that has the potential to change the trajectory of the lives of people who are at the lower end of the economic spectrum in society. What do you think will be the impact of this bill upon them? And secondly, if I could ask you to make a more wider comment on the historical context of this bill. In 2006, it was a Scottish Labour government in the Scottish Parliament that set in train perhaps some of the processes that we're trying to finish the job on here today. And over those 14 to 15 years, we've seen many positive short-term and long-term public health outcomes. What do you think will be history's judgment upon this proportion of that journey?
Two very good questions.
Shorter than the question.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of this bill, it is a landmark piece of legislation, and I think it will be the biggest advance in public health for a generation. It will be a truly historic thing. I mean, what a wonderful thing to say that in the near future, no child born after the 1st of January 2009 will ever legally be able to be sold tobacco. And that leads me on to your first point. Tobacco is a killer. It kills around 80,000 people in this country a year. It is responsible for a quarter of all cancers. It puts enormous pressure on our NHS and on our economy. And the death rate of somebody in a more deprived part of our country is over 2 times higher as a consequence of smoking. Look, there's no reason beyond smoking as to why the life chances of somebody living and growing up in Richmond is so better than somebody growing up and living in Blackpool. And that's because the smoking prevalence of somebody in Richmond is around 4.6%. And the smoking prevalence of somebody living in Blackpool is still over 20%. This will save lives. This will narrow health inequalities. And that's what all of us, irrespective of our parties, all of us was brought here to do.
Yeah. Dr. Becky Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, for that rousing speech. I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to bring you back to smoke-free spaces. As you say, the bill is going to lead to smoke-free spaces outside schools, children's playgrounds and hospitals, all very laudable and very evidence-based. I think it is important, if you can, that you actually address the issue around hospitality settings. Could you please state to the committee why that is not currently in the bill as it stands?
So we wanted to have a proportionate approach. We recognise the difficulty that the hospitality sector has gone through and is in. We listened to the voices of concern. And look, we decided that as far as England is concerned, and I can't speak for ministerial colleagues in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, but as far as England is concerned, we wanted to target outdoor smoke-free places to areas where children and where the most vulnerable are likely to be. And that leads to the logical conclusion of outside hospitals, where there's a lot of vulnerable people going through the doors of hospitals, outside schools and outside children's playgrounds.
Okay, thanks. Alex Barros-Curtis.
I wonder, Minister, if you could just say a little bit more about why the four-nation approach. Obviously, I say that as a Welsh MP myself, and we've talked about some of the really positive and progressive examples that have been illustrated in Wales and which we can learn from. But is that four-nation approach one of the real strengths of this bill in order to ensure that you get that that world you've talked about, which I think we all agree on this, well, not to speak for everyone, but I suspect we all support. So just wonder if you could say a little bit more about that four-nation approach, and if that is one of the key strengths underpinning this bill.
It is, and look, the four nations that make up our United Kingdom have gone at different speeds and at different depths in terms of tobacco control over recent years. And Zabir was absolutely right to point out it was the Scottish Labour government that first introduced the indoor smoking ban, and we followed suit soon after. But I think that it's really important that the four nations stand together on this, not least because some of this does require a four-nation approach in legislative terms, but also it means that we can meet this ambition together, that we're all in this together, because for me, a health inequality in parts of Greater Manchester is just as important as a health inequality in Glasgow or in Cardiff or in Belfast. We need to tackle these inequalities because it is a scourge on our society, and that's why having a four-nation approach and having the permissive nature of this bill, so that the four nations can go forward together, but can also diverge on the basis of extending consultations and so on. And I think that's why we do have the support of the devolved nations and the ministers who come from different political persuasions across Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland. We're all in one as far as this bill is concerned, and we've shaped it together.
Thank you.
Okay, Mary Kelly-Foy.
Thank you, Chair. We've heard from all the witnesses today overwhelmingly how important this bill will be in terms of tackling inequalities and bringing about a smoke-free future. And I'm very confident that this will pass. In terms of supporting the 6 million current smokers that we have in the UK, do the government still have plans to make good on their pledge to produce a roadmap and a strategy as to how targets can be reached, especially in places like the North East or in those other deprived areas, so that we can keep an eye on those smokers who do want to quit and what the smoking prevalence ranges are in those areas, because I think there is a few of the witnesses and some of the submissions have called for that. That would really help them.
Look, this is really important, and I want all members to understand that a key aspect of reaching our smoke-free ambition is to drive down the prevalence of current smokers. And that means a real investment in smoking cessation. It means a close eye on what's happening on the ground. And it means using the flexibilities in this bill, should they be needed, to ensure that we reach that smoke-free ambition. We've announced the £70 million of Stop Smoking funding just this week. That has been weighted towards the areas with highest deprivation and highest smoking prevalence, so that we can really try and drive down those inequalities. Obviously, future years funding is subject to the usual processes of the spending review, but let me make it very clear. It is a priority of this government to invest in stop smoking services, and we will ensure that local authorities and the public health functions of this country have the resources we need to reach smoke-free.